Last time, Ashoka witnessed the horrific aftermath of the Kalinga War. He saw thousands of corpses strewn across the battlefield, their lifeless eyes staring blankly at the sky. He saw grieving families torn apart, their cries echoing through the desolate landscape. And he saw the once proud warriors lying defeated, their weapons abandoned, their dreams of glory turned to dust. The stench of death hung heavy in the air, mingling with the sweet fragrance of blooming flowers, creating a sickeningly sweet parody of life. In the face of such devastation, Ashoka's heart crumbled, his spirit withered. He started attending Buddhist sermons, engaging in deep discussions with monks and studying ancient scriptures. Ashoka's thirst for knowledge was insatiable. He wanted to understand the core of Buddhism, its essence, its teachings and its philosophies. Overwhelmed with remorse and guilt, he questioned everything he had ever believed in, every value he had held dear. These teachings resonated with him as he grappled with the truth of suffering, the origin of suffering, the possibility of liberation from suffering, and the path to achieve that liberation. So he started practicing meditation, trying to quiet his mind and delve into the depths of his own being. There were skeptics who doubted his sincerity, advisors who urged him to stick to tradition, and some who simply couldn't comprehend this sudden shift in his thinking. Now, remember, the term Dharma in ancient India had multiple meanings, but in essence, it meant righteousness, duty, and cosmic order, and avoiding harsh words, being generous and compassionate, and most importantly, promoting peace and harmony among his diverse subjects. And Ashoka didn't just preach these ideals, he embodied them. For Ashoka, Dharma became the cornerstone of his rule, the guiding principle for his administration, and the framework for his relationship with his subjects. But Ashoka remained steadfast. He knew that his calling now lay in spreading the message of peace and nonviolence, not just within his empire, but beyond its borders. Through meditation, he hoped to attain a state of inner peace and enlightenment, a state free from the turbulence of worldly desires and the agony of past actions. He saw himself not as a conqueror, but as a steward, a caretaker of his people's well-being. For instance, while he promoted peace externally, he also worked towards fostering peace within himself. The bloodshed of the Kalinga War had opened his eyes to the preciousness of life. He also encouraged vegetarianism and the practice of Ahimsa, or non-violence, throughout his empire. He understood that true power lay not in subjugating others, but in uplifting them. He also issued edicts that promoted trade and commerce, knowing that a thriving economy was crucial for the happiness of his subjects. He realized that every living being, whether human or animal, deserved to live and thrive. He took his duties as the emperor of one of the largest empires in ancient India extremely seriously. However, Ashoka's resolve only grew stronger. He understood that true strength lay not in brute force, but in the courage of one's convictions. So let us draw inspiration from Ashoka's life and work towards making the world a better place, one act of kindness, one step towards peace at a time. It'll help us keep bringing these epic stories to life. Also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. You'll be glad you did, because there are more adventures waiting just around the corner. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. He wanted to transform his entire empire. He envisioned a state that ruled not through fear and oppression, but through ethical conduct and the promotion of Dharma. This marked a radical departure from the norms of the time, when empires were built on conquest and cruelty. He meditated regularly, seeking inner tranquility and understanding. He released many prisoners, including some death row inmates, believing that even those who had done wrong could reform. A state where the ruler's power was not absolute, but was tempered by ethics, compassion, and a deep sense of responsibility towards his people. It reminds us that no matter how dark things might seem, there's always a chance for redemption. It shows us that even in the darkest of times, one person's journey can change the course of history. These edicts were not just legal decrees. They were moral compasses guiding his subjects on how to live, how to treat each other, and how to interact with their world. And he drastically cut down on animal sacrifices and feasts in his court, replacing them with simpler, more ethical celebrations. He used his vast network of officials to disseminate these teachings, ensuring that they reached every corner of his empire. Then he delved deeper into the concept of karma and rebirth, realizing that every action had a consequence that transcended this earthly realm. What was this thirst for conquest? What was this insatiable hunger for power? These questions echoed in his mind, demanding answers. Now, let's continue with the episode. They saw him transforming from a troubled and tormented ruler into a man of peace and purpose. It was a doctrine that preached peace, compassion, and the avoidance of violence. This teaching profoundly affected him as he realized that true strength lay not in inflicting pain, but in showing restraint and kindness. Yet, amidst this spiritual awakening, there was a part of Ashoka that still grappled with his past, particularly the brutality of the Kalinga War. He agonized over the lives lost, the families torn apart, and the suffering he had caused. Throughout history, there have been countless rulers who have craved power, who have yearned to leave their mark on the world. But how many of them have truly understood the weight of their actions, the ripple effects of their decisions, and the human cost of their ambitions? In the case of Chandragupta Maurya, we see a man wrestling with the consequences of his past, grappling with the weight of the empire he has built and the path he has chosen to tread. It was after the Kalinga War that Ashoka, the great emperor of the Mauryan Empire, experienced a profound transformation. The victory that should have been the zenith of his power became the nadir of his soul, and in the depths of his despair, something extraordinary happened. Ashoka, the conqueror, died, and in his place stood Ashoka the convert. The turning point came when he listened to the Buddhist monk, the Venerable Sanaka, who spoke about the futility of war and the importance of peace and nonviolence. This encounter planted the seeds of change in Ashoka's heart, and as he pondered over Sanaka's words, he realized that the real strength of a ruler lay not in his military prowess, but in his ability to rule with justice, compassion, and wisdom. From that moment on, Ashoka embarked on a journey of self-discovery and spiritual awakening. Initially, he began with the basics, understanding the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. But it wasn't just about intellectual understanding. Ashoka wanted to experience the transformative power of Buddhism firsthand. Ashoka's personal growth didn't go unnoticed. His officials, advisors, and even his family noticed the change in him. It was during this period that Ashoka discovered the concept of Ahimsa, or nonviolence. However, Ashoka's journey from a warrior king to a proponent of peace wasn't easy, so he embarked on a mission to convert his empire into a beacon of peace and an instrument of Dharma. He laid down 8 fundamental pillars of Dharma, which included treating all living beings with kindness. Speaking truthfully, he walked the talk. His officials and courtiers were astounded by this sudden shift. Some viewed it as a sign of weakness, a softening in the face of adversity. And Ashoka wasn't content with merely changing himself, but Ashoka dared to dream of something different, a dream where the mighty Mauryan Empire would become a shining example of a Dharma state. Ashoka began to view his vast empire not as a source of personal glory or material wealth, but as a trust placed in his hands. One of the most striking aspects of Ashoka's transformation was his newfound respect for all forms of life, and so he became a patron of animal rights, reducing the use of animals for sacrifice and war. But Ashoka's impact went far beyond his personal life and immediate surroundings. For him, ruling was not about accumulating power or wealth, but about serving his people and ensuring their well-being. And so he embarked on a series of ambitious welfare projects, building hospitals, roads, and public works across his empire. And let's not forget, his most famous and impactful edicts were those inscribed on pillars and rocks across his empire. In these edicts, he propagated the values of Dharma, emphasizing truthfulness, nonviolence, compassion, and generosity. Ashoka's transformation serves as a beacon of hope and inspiration, and it encourages us to strive for peace, understanding, and compassion in our own lives. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to give it a thumbs up.